Oh. No. I won't lie to you guys. I had to look this one over a bunch to see how to say it authentically, correctly, safely, righteously, helpfully. Because talking about Venus stuff is often very awkward, especially emerging out of a patristic, historical, monotheistical, traditional parlance. There's a way to say it that's really what it's saying, and then there's the challenge of the core assumptions in the alchemical language. But I think I got it. The challenge, of course, is where to start from. Because we started on the first half of this and stopped without resolving most of the things. And I think I'm just going to start from there. Did have an urge to skip a lot, and I might still try to just zoom through the beginning to get to the good part in the hopes of giving over in time. Let's see how close we get. Little racing fishes. דברי תנא ישמע פסוק כי אני אדוני מלא אתכם מארץ מצרים בכל מקום לאמור מוציא וישוע למלא לי עלית אל ישראל מצרים אלא על מנת שאינם מטעמים משרצים. You know, there's a tradition that we only got out of Egypt because we didn't eat the food, you know. And the word for the gross food is just like the gross food, just like the shratzim. It's just like the word for the gross food. You can say it in a lot of ways, like survived the buffet in Vegas because I didn't eat the shrimp. Right? There's a thing like that where you could avoid the mistake in the thing that gets you killed. Like another extreme of this is Odysseus, right? He avoids getting eaten by the sirens by tying himself up. And this is a far extreme of that, because there he is trying to get close to the thing without being consumed by it. And this is long a bugaboo of everyone who's trying to get closer to the good things, you know. They come up with a theory here. דברים מהם כן מן הצורך להריב ושנו זה לא יקשב לא ידיעו הקניינים לעולם הזה צריכים לברור וברר טוב מנורא וזה לחילה ושתייה ועניין העולם הזה בכל אדם את הצומח והחי אזי שב אכילה ולתיות תצא מצמא בשר מבשרו יהיה בכוח אכילה ובעד נדע. The rule of the things, deal. Things are just so deeply embedded, and it's not even important to go on about it too much. It's hard, the things that aren't known, all the things in the world that need to be clarified. They're all hard. Everything that you don't know if it's good or bad, if it's right or wrong, if it's delicious in a good way or delicious in a toxic way, you know. Anything where it's clear, it's great. The supermarket and the ice cream, yay, as much as they can be yay. And as much as it's not clear, it's rough. And this is the secret of eating at all. The secret of drinking at all. Too much water, not enough water. Too much carbs, not enough carbs. And everything about this world, every context in this world is a little bit like this media consumption, right? How long and what for? the sprouting is the vegetables, and the chai is the animals. And as much as anyone eats any of them, and whatever he takes in, whatever person or anything that lives takes in, becomes parts of their essence, their bones, their base. Sorrow, and flesh is flesh. Right. It goes from the strength and serves God, and whatever surplus is just passed from the body, happens to fish, happens to us. Filters, good filters everywhere. Good filters, fish. Good filters, good filters, good filters. The good being taken into us to give us capacity to serve whatever divine we represent. And the rest, let go of. That's just how animals roll. I was amazed when I realized the fish poop too, but curing. And of course, everything that's discouraged strongly still has something precious inside of it. Even the rubber tires. Let's say you just want to eat a rubber tire. It just looks so good. It would be gross and you spit it out. Okay, fine. But even in the first place, right? Charlie Chaplin's boot. Everything that isn't worthwhile, it's just important to clarify and know. And this is known from the thing of the Exodus from Egypt. Couldn't just sit with and process and digest and consume. Sometimes you just need to get out. And all the exiles, and every exile, from the house, in the supermarket, on the bus, on the run. It's all in the hopes of finding good things and liberating them and being liberated with them. Good things wherever they are. I was thinking about the mystery of is there a sacred colonialism, a sacred gentrification, or only an evil one? An evil colonialism, an evil gentrification. Those are both very strong extremes, right? The closest thing to a sacred gentrification we can think of is pilgrimage, as if, and refugee pilgrimage. We tend to think of that at our most judgmental or our most hostile, still as somehow pure and stripped of the thing we associate with colonialism, which assumes bounty and excess, right? Going somewhere just to take resources. And there is a specter in gentrification and thus all migration that is not from, oh my gosh, my village has been destroyed. Okay, fine. But from, I heard it's really nice out there. Pilgrimage, right? The will to come and colonize is somehow romanticizable when it comes to pilgrimage. I just want to come there and see how you guys do it. Maybe learn to do it with you guys. You guys are amazing. I love the way you guys are. Right? We think of that as being migration, maybe not displacement. But let's say in the hopes and in the romance of finding something good in a place where we are or where we aren't, finding something good either in a place I need to go because I heard a story or have an opportunity, and the place that I am, maybe for reasons. Let's say, finding a safe and righteous context for the thing. Alu. The 8 case. Some people left behind according to what is the part of us that somehow can't make it. This is part of the Superman mythology, right? Let's say Superman's whole planet, Krypton, full of great people doing great things. He visits there in a very legit, I think, story by Jerry Siegel. And Joe Shuster just goes back to Krypton, sees or goes forwards to Krypton. Some versions he goes back in time. Some versions it's just still there. Didn't get destroyed. Parts of it didn't get destroyed. Or goes back in time and they have their own Marilyn Monroe. They have their own Babe Ruth, But they couldn't come along. Just this one very pure essence. This is the problematic theology of relating to Venus, right? Is the question of justification. Here, he's going to talk about it. Oh, no, the story, they say that not everyone made it out of Egypt in the darkness. On the 3 days of darkness, specifically 3, whoever just wasn't going to go just stuck around. Just stuck around in the darkness. And whoever was going to go just didn't have darkness at all and just had light and walked around, did stuff. And thus they were able to filter out who was leaving and who wasn't leaving. That's one version of this line in the Bible, Chamushim, they left. But even without that story, there's that psalm. Everyone just comes out and everyone just gets clarified, because the nature of leaving anything that feels wrong is to be clarified. And whatever part of us comes out of it, endures, survives, grows, reattaches, stabilizes, grounds, invests. They're clarified there in whatever is left of them. We are clarified here in whatever is left of us by God Himself, by God Himself, by God Himself. ולמה לא המתין השם יברך ביצי מצרים עד שברו כולם, כי לא יכלו להתהמע, די בראו כבר מאשר לקליפה. But why couldn't everyone just leave? There's a little theodicy moment. Why couldn't everyone just leave? It's because they couldn't wait. Couldn't delay. Just couldn't wait. I'm not sure if he means the people who couldn't make it were the ones that couldn't wait, or the people who left them behind were the ones who couldn't wait. Like in that Ovid-avodahzara song. And here he suggests this clarification is from the 50th gate of the Klipa. The 49th gate is almost too much. And the 50th, you're a junkie. Now you're a Nazi. Your 50th gate, like let's say you get close, you're like flirting with, trial heroin, try a little neo-Nazi literature, just like work. There's degrees of pollution. And then there's something called the 50th gate. After you get to the 50th gate of holiness, let's say, you're just good folks, right? Something in you's already worked out. Oh, good. Let's say it's associated with understanding and Athena, right? Comprehension. Once you understand something, it's hard not to understand it. You've crossed the 50th gate, right? Once you speak a language, you speak a language. And until you do, you haven't. You might know a few words. And this leaving behind of whoever was left behind in Egypt, and this general leaving behind of whatever isn't right for us, is so bound up in just the 50th gate of the Klipa. The part where, let's say in a vampire movie, oh no, your best friend's a vampire. He's a vampire now. Some vampire movies feature the idea that a vampire can become better or just not as bad and just likes you. And some vampire movies, it's very important to understand, that is not your friend anymore. And this is not fair. Venus and Aphrodite, in a lot of their early depictions in Phoenicia, around here, were armed, just carrying spears. This is a Kali aspect of Aphrodite. Demeter is there a little bit also. Capable and furious, but moved by these feelings, moved by these clarities, also to defend. Oh, תם לברר ויודע שבברח שאין זה בחוק מן האנושי. And this is not giving over into our hands to understand quite the difference until it is. Right? The clarification of when it's okay just to run and when it's so important just to wait. Right? We kind of know and we kind of don't. And we kind of know kind of even for ourselves. And it's hard to really know for anyone else. Refugees, soldiers gone AWOL, just fleeing. Hard to imagine. But we all do our best to understand. And God knows it's not one of those laws that's in human hands. The standard is not really there. It's just God clarifying until forever. Whatever a movement or individual wants to be judged by, good luck. Good luck judging authentically and accurately. You can always try, but you're always projecting, and that's part of the standard. So I'm sure you've all heard of this concept about religions forbidding certain food, namely Judaism, but a bunch of the best religions, Sikh standards are such good. Sikh standards. So many good dietary prohibitions out there. Avoid refined oils. Wouldn't that be a great religion? But that's bigger than religion, right? Religion is okay. Regionally, we don't eat fish because we're from Ascalon. Or, everything listed in the Bible, they're forbidden and encouraged. And they start by saying, oh, these are fine. And in the thing where it's written, after the detail of everything that is not kosher in the Bible to eat. One has to wonder, how did they know? Where did they get this big list of things you can't eat? It's things like, oh, these are some delicious things that are not kosher, right? Darwin's like I'm making a big list. So there's a line that explains it. I am the God that took you out of Egypt, where they had everything and knew how to cure everything. One of the miracle accomplishments of Egypt and Egyptian civilization, just making it safe to function on a large scale. Such an important skill. Safe to function on a large scale. Ethos, somehow to function like that, and yet still really cursed by the nature of how it enslaves you and I. And so, let's say you're in your sort of rough childhood. Anyone, everyone, everything that lives might have some kind of rough childhood, and thus can sort of emerge from it into the rest of their lives and the rest of their priorities, just like Venus and Eros turning into the fish. This is my running thesis, and I think he's going to back it up in a second. You'll see. For anyone who wants to excuse anything that ever happens because just, divine will, don't. Because also, there was a lot of holy sparks in those people who did not make it out of Egypt. Writ large, right? Egypt is like a euphemism here, maybe for history. Everyone who didn't make it out was just as special as you, had tons of holy sparks in them. That's no excuse. And nonetheless, it's out of my hands, bro. It's not really inhuman. And we're using that word human very specifically here. Enoshi. And so it is, why are kosher things kosher and non-kosher things non-kosher? You can give reasons, but the reasons are all a little tangential. They might be, they might not be. They're meaningful. They might not be meaningful. They might be meaningful. Nonetheless, also sort of off, just out of human hands, the big list of like, well, we just don't. Let's say. And it's, all the more so in the involvement of people in them, to clarify them, all the more so to be involved with the mix one's whole self and heart into understanding what's worthwhile and what's just really not. And for sure, anyone who's trying is going to be clarifying them just forever, the worthwhile and the worthwhile. And the somehow really not worthwhile anymore for another moment. Until the end. And this is the secret of the thing that Rabbi Ishmael, noted Ketoret burner in the temple, one of the earliest and last of the interstitial sort of figures in the Mishnaic narrative, asked, why did God take Israel out of Egypt? And the only reason it gives is because they didn't eat lizards. They didn't eat bugs. That's crazy talk, right? But let's say it's a little bit the mystery of what it is that gives it any kind of integrity. Our standards, our values as communities, as nerds, as fandoms, our values, right? Our priorities, our standards, like the things we can't help but know that guide the rest to some degree, to whatever degree of what we do or what we talk about. He goes on like this for a while, and he starts to get very concerned. I am going to skip you guys. I'm going to do it. I'm skipping. Because he's talking about this very liminal regional challenge that we all maybe suffer in a different sense of trying to be right and in integrity with our consumption. And because here's the thing, sometimes something that's bad gets mixed into something that's good. Watching a very woke program, and then there's commercials, And sometimes it's the other way. Like, they have a great actor who you like from independent media, does a commercial, and it's like, oh, good. I'm going to ignore the commercial and just appreciate this because I can just appreciate common beyond the sprite, But on the other hand, no, forget the other hand. Let's talk about that first hand. It happens all the time with all our consumption that we mix whatever degree of the unknowable within it. Let's say we are very healthy, but then we go to like weddings or restaurants, or soup kitchens, or just free samplers, or relatives' houses. And we suddenly just like, well, let me see what I can find that I can feel good about eating. We can be like, no, I don't eat any of this stuff. Super, snob fundamentalism. Just no, thank you. I brought my own, or I'll wait till I get home. The people, I do that. We all do that. It happens. You don't like the food everywhere. I was advised by Rabbi Michael Odenheimer one time to always have a little bit of what they're offering, because otherwise people are offended. It's very important people to like see that you can appreciate a little of what they're offering you, especially if they go out of their way at all to make sure to have what they think you might dig. Maybe just a little, but make it look like you're eating. But on the other hand, there's all these things that do cross over. And this is recognized in all the rule books. Like a certain percent of this mixed into that, it's fine. In fact, go for it. And, well, okay, fine. Here it comes. כיוון שבכל ראש אני אברך, אחד מתקשר על זה, כי כן כל דברים מנסרים לפי נשלם כפוד טיפי תבין גם מפורסם מדברי חז"ל רוב מוקשרות הם אינן אנחנו רואים בזמן הזה תהיה ההפך אך לדעתי מדור הקודמים היו ברוב הנצות הקדושות ומבחינת הטוב בתוכם היו קשרות כדי שאכלם ישראלים היום כבר נדבר הטוב ולא נשאר רק מעט. He's like, it used to be that most animals were basically kosher. Like, let's say, like most cows, whatever, just cut them up and they're usually healthy. But nowadays, he says, like 200 years ago, 150 years ago, nowadays, he says, it's not true. Most of the ones we slaughter are not quite kosher. Little damages, everything's getting a little sicker. And he suggests this is because a lot of the good has stopped being in meat. A lot of the holy sparks have already been taken out. Everything's been eaten the way it's as much as it can be eaten. And maybe there's just less there. Maybe there's just less good in the meat and more good to be found in the other things. And this is just the nature of the clarification as we get closer to the end of time, noticing the meat inside the algae, right? As much protein as spirulina as there is in steak. Horf. But let's say part of the nature of the change and fixing in the world is how much of what has been milked doesn't need to be milked anymore. And he makes this a messianic thing. He understands this as a messianic thing. Hu ikvot mashicha asher chufza se'azki hanu arach biyoter al ken al pi arov b'meimot harod netrafim k'dei shelo yachlam n'Yisrael ve'en latev. Let's say the closer it gets to the big turnaround, the worse it gets, right? Very late stage capitalism. Let's say the worse it gets. So much so that most of the things that you might eat and that are out there to eat are just awful and really just have to be avoided, at any means necessary. Maybe not consumed, but certainly not consumed, maybe not produced. That's the next step afterwards, right? A world where they're not producing quite as much bulk horror and ruination. That's after the turnaround. But in the moments leading up to the turnaround, also associated with the number of 3, let's say 3 hours, 3 years, just things just getting worse. Very late stage capitalism, right? Or late stage communism. Either way, you get to the store and there's not much there, or there's so much there and it's all crap. A giant store full of things that no one should use, right? Have you seen a pharmacy like that? Oh, I don't know if that's the word for it. Let's say And now, it's from the fitting things to contemplate, he says, one of the more radical things. And this is the point where the fundamentalist impulse in the religion overcomes the pietist impulse in the religion because of the faith trip. He just says it right here, like 200 years ago, and in such pious language. I'm sure you've heard things like this before, but in context, it's very meaningful. From here, it's from the things worth considering. Because this thing is from God, and he mixes the forbidden into the permitted and just makes you try it and just makes you eat it in ways that we're completely unwitting to and can't avoid and can't control, you know. So it's important to show up with it and just appreciate it. There are some famous jokes like this. The guy is forced to eat the non-kosher thing. Like there's a Polish Jewish businessman is working with a genteel buddy of his, and he has him over, and the genteel buddy has him over for dinner, and he's like, drinking, because they're in the whiskey or vodka business. That's how they met. They're in the whiskey and vodka business, and they're drinking. And the genteel fellow is like has him over, says, "Hey, do you want some of this fantastic roast pork we've been having?" He's like, "No, I can't. I'm not. We don't. It's just." It's like, oh, what do you mean? I say, well, my religion, we don't need to. Okay, fine. No matter what, you don't eat it. No matter what. It's like, well, I won't lie to you, Johan. We do have some dispensations. Really? What are the well? If my life is in danger, I'm allowed to eat the pork. And he's like, oh, okay. And he pulls out a gun and says, all right, eat the pork. He's like, oh, sure. And then Johan just starts laughing and says, oh man, it's okay. I'm sorry. I just wanted you to be able to try it. It's really good. And it's like, I really appreciate that. Thank you. I wished you had pulled the gun out while it was still warm. Right? There, the covenant is between people, and there is no external factor or force besides just, two business associates trying to impress each other, I suppose. Trying to keep integrity with themselves, I suppose. But here it's God who wants everyone to enjoy the food. The God who lives from the enjoyment of food. The God who lives in the feeling of satisfaction and delight that anything that lives, especially you, experience. You and me. Okay, I am going to skip, because what's this got to do with fishes? And from all this, skipping ahead, he builds on it all, but he keeps it pretty much close to this idea. And from this, understand why a widow is married on Thursday. Quoting a Gemara in Ketuvos, saying, widows married on Thursdays, maybe because of the blessing of the fish, right? Fish were created on Thursday, according to the Bible, famously, in the book of Genesis, famously, like the fourth day, stars, the sun and the moon, the stars. But the fifth day, fish and birds, just everywhere, just filling the whole world. And only on the sixth day, animals and people. But here, keep in mind, specifically the blessing of the fish. דהנה כל הבריות נמחו מבומני החטא, כי תשחית כל בשר את כל הארץ, אבל הדגים לא ישתכחו דרכם, כי בארץ די קבלו הגים. The flood narrative in the Bible did not kill the fish. All the animals, all the unicorns, and behemoths were all basically uprooted. But the fish were fine. That's the blessing of the fish. To not be destroyed. This is historical, right? It's a different world now. The fish are being destroyed, a range of ways. They keep coming back, a lot of them, in different ways. It's hard for fish to get too far away when the nets are everywhere. And Leviathan is always legendary for somehow not really being the kind of fish that can get caught in a net. But all the rest can. But on the other hand, the flood. And keep in mind, this is the Aphrodite narrative also, right? The flood that hit the world had to be survived somehow. And the fish can survive the floods. Mythically, it's very hot water, doesn't matter. Cold water doesn't matter. Nessie don't care, right? Nessie survive. And it even says in the Genesis narrative, everything on the earth, specifically, not the fish, was destroyed. וכתבנו לשם התם, לאמות החיות נאמר, תצייר את נפש חיה למינה. ואם כן יצאו בשינה ממינם, ושכמו אחר כך בדגים נאמר, שיוצאו מים שרס נפש חיה. ולא נאמר למינו. When the animals were created, it says each one to their own variety, but to the fish, it just said to live, just to live, not to any particular variety. And this is emphasized. כל בריות שבאים אחד הם לא אסרו מין שאינו מינו, אם כן הדגים לא יסיחיתו דרכם דגם מין שאינו מינו מותר אצלם. Fish are not so picky like animals. Animals, in general, tend to only breed with animals like them and hang out in this, range of socializations. But fish are just flowing. Their genders are fluid according to just like the weather and the cold. And even the way they sort of breed is just to sort of like just move around, just give their thing and just, let it go. That's part of the fish escape movement, and that's part of the purity of the fish. לפי זה תתבונן דקטרוג מבואר בזוהר דקטרגל ומיוחדנו ונוסע מנה דווקא שנושא אינו משורשו. And the context of this, understand, the section of the Talmud talking about marrying a widow on Thursday, I looked this up, you guys, contrasted to marrying a, non-widow, just a fresh lady off the grapevine in archaic, patristic market parlance. The concern they suggest is maybe this is about something to do with how different someone relates to different opportunities. And they conclude, no, it's for like very practical reasons. It's very functional reasons that, young ladies get married on Wednesdays and widows get married on Thursdays. The truth is, everyone just gets married whenever they do. They make that rule very clear. Everyone just does whatever they do. But in the let's say the famous book of mysticism, the Zohar, they raise the question about why would anyone have a temptation? Why would anyone think that there was a temptation after something as wonderful as wedding to imagine that someone's not right for them? Right? Hard to imagine. You spend all that time thinking about it, noticing, and then you get there and that's one of the suggested reasons for someone on Wednesday, so that they have a day to process whatever they find out. But fish aren't like that. And then the Zohar mentions in the context of the secret of the biblical injunction to marry a widow. specifically of your sibling. Marry your sibling's widow. Like I'm sure, like I think John, like all kinds of good people have done. All kinds of good Joes and Johns have done. Marry the widow of your sibling to prove that this is my people. Because there's a lot of the fear is, oh, who's that? And a lot of the hope is to make clear that people are loved and held and seen for. And this is the thing that the Gemara is actually claiming in light of why they're concerned with that all. They say shaked, to make safe, to make right for, everybody. But this time we're talking about here. We're talking about the secret of that's why it's called romantic to get married on Thursdays, because don't worry about it. I think that's what he's saying. Asher chayu b'yom zam, because the fish survive all the rage, and this is the power of Venus in many ways. The power of Kali, power of Isis, right? Just to survive all the fire and rage, and inside still be so much in love and in presence. So in the presence of desire and Venus, there's a clarity of divinity, that something is for sure one of yours, and they're with you. And this can lead to delusion, where you think something's yours and it's not, like a psycho, psycho do delusions. Experiencing divinity in the context of someone, and then presuming that entitles them to something. Chas v'shalom, we shouldn't know from it. But the blessing in that insanity is that sense that, aha, I am where I need to be. There is nowhere else to go. And this is the irony in the movement. Here, this is the part I've been wanting to get to the whole time. And now contemplate. וגם השתה בזמן הזה שאין בידינו יום קבוע, הנה תקנו אישה נישאת בכל יום. Just contemplate. Nowadays we just get married whenever. It doesn't matter, because we are so in love whenever, and that's what a wedding is, forever. Hey. וזה גם כן כבידה כיוון דחל בה מתקנת חכמים הן תקנו בעת אישה נישאת בכל יום ואין כבידה. Because everyone knows people just do what they're going to do, and there's something wonderful about celebrating it. The ein kavida, and there's no insistence that something be done for the sake of fortune, just embrace of how much it's happening. And now he's going to quote something he said in front of one of his favorite masters, Sheshma b'shem Rav HaKadosh, who heard the name of Wow. With Herschel of Zidikajver, his uncle, whatever. שנפש נפתין לה בעלייה כך לחוז חפצה עד שנשנסה מתגעים היא יותר לכך עדיין והדבר נפל בעיניה שהוא הפך דברי הזוהר. That the soul that passes does not have an ascension so much until their spouse remarries. And it's not like the Zohar. Until this other thing that was supposed to happen for her is able to happen for her. And this is not quite like the Zohar. It's kind of the opposite of Zohar. The resolution can only happen from what the other person, the survivor, notices and gets to feel whole with. And from here, just clarify from his holy words, which he's also sort of brokenly half quoting. Because the thing the Zohar says is from before the thing was fixed. Here it comes. Umeata nachzor leinu b'mitzvah machzit shekel. Now let's go back to our context. The splitting of the shekel. We talked about this in section 1. The half shekel that they're counting through is part of the ancient alchemical impulse to somehow make a work of transformation in metal and a weighing to atone for the nature of being, right? And somehow thus overcome death and overcome limitation, right? So in the Bible, there's a moment where they just use this just to count everyone. First things first, we can't count people. We can count their atonements in coin or in weighed silver. And this is the sort of precursor before the people make themselves a golden calf, is giving of a silver coin or weight just to gauge how much people they is. This is our context, he insists, because he started off on a few things ago, and which is why I mentioned at the beginning, despite not wanting to. I learned a Zohar where the half shekel is the hay of the Shekhinah. That's complicated. It's the whole community. That's, seems tangential, but then he keeps bringing it up. Noga asher ba me'orev tov v'ra. Heat is a big part of smelting. And the glow of the heat is a big part of the transformation cycle. The half shekel, by definition, is the secret of clarifying the sparks from Noga specifically, right? Because counting itself is cursed until they find a way to do it that's okay. Just like all those other things that are ostensibly could be experienced as forbidden, and thus it's really important to justify and find why no, it's okay. I'm talking about every queer thing that seems really important and really right and begs to be justified. מחצית נקרא תרומת היינו לבירר להרים לחלק הטוב נדחה הרע, וזה כל פרעי מסע בעבודתו, וזה רמז במצווה לעזור אשר נודע לך שקל סוד המשקל. The weighing is the clarification, weighing out specifically a relatively small amount, half a shekel, half of a whole one. And this is the secret of what it is to weigh at all, to gauge, to measure, to know through knowledge if something's worthwhile, how much is worthwhile, how much is perfect or right or good, specifically. And Noga herself is called weighing. Tikla. Hey. Yay, welcome home.